Welcome to our viewers today. Thank you for joining us for our webinar, Empowering the Data-Driven Enterprise with Cisco and Cloudian. Joining us today are Nitin Garg, Senior Manager, Product Management at Cisco, and Grant Jacobson, Director, Technology Alliance at Cloudian.
So with that, let me just introduce the agenda here. We're going to introduce the challenges that we have seen from our customers, that we see in the marketplace, and we're going to show you how a joint solution from Cloudian and Cisco address those challenges. Then we'll deep dive into that and finish off with some use cases on where this is most meaningful. And with that, I'll just kick that off and talk about the key challenges that we're seeing. Perhaps you're seeing some of these or all of these as well. Let's just start with the big picture. There's more data than ever, and the growth is actually accelerating. So we've never had more data than we have today, and it's roughly doubling every couple of years. IDC has published reports saying that by 2025, there is expected to be 175 zettabytes of data, and even more kinds of data. I've listed here on the slide some of the traditional data, like backing up data backed up or archive, enterprise data like email, but there's new types of data like IoT data. Video surveillance is growing quite fast. Healthcare data such as medical imaging, life science data, research data, it's just exploding. And where you find that are these data-intensive application workloads, such as those listed here, including manufacturing, financial, healthcare. These are really traditional segments in the market with just lots and lots of data. Electronic design automation happens to be one of the fastest growing, as well as oil and gas. You can imagine all the sensor data that comes from that. This slide here shows that with this growth of data, really a new solution is needed because you have new requirements for capacity. Where is that data going to be stored, and how do you make sure that's still accessible? There's also network bandwidth growth requirements as well, because that data needs to be accessed, and there's a widening gap, as this picture shows, between the capacity requirement and even the increasing bandwidth growth requirement. Where and how do you solve for that? We're seeing bandwidth needs, for example, at the edge, on-premise. We'll talk later, but also in the cloud and access to that cloud data. The other thing, of course, is how do you manage it? And we're seeing a lot of customers trying to solve this problem because the data is growing, the density of storage is growing, but how do you manage all those boxes? And not only that, but where do you put the boxes? How many administrators do you need? And really, this does not scale. And I'll mention the move to the cloud. According to surveys, 71% of enterprise organizations are using a hybrid cloud model today, and that's with data on-prem as well as in the cloud. And that's going to rise to 85%, or that has risen, I should say, to 85%. With respect to a multi-cloud architecture. So not only are enterprises have data and workloads in the cloud, but they have more than one public cloud, as this picture shows here. across their organization. So integrating cloud into your environment is introducing tremendous complexity, and that just adds to the management problem, that adds to the cost, and that adds as well to how does all that get architected with the applications. So we have some good news. We have a solution available today, and I'll turn this over to Nitin to discuss.
Thank you, Grant. So what we want to talk about today is the joint solution from Cisco and Cloudian. We have created a solution that's based on the software programmable compute, that is Cisco UCS platform, and the highly scalable and differentiated Cloudian HyperStore for enterprise class object storage. In fact, we have created a validated design for that, so Cisco validated design that has been published, and the link here is, link for the validated design is here. It's also in the back of the slide deck where the resources are, and it's also in the attachments in the links section on your right-hand side, along with other resources. So let me talk about the details of this validated design that we did. And this validated design is based on UCS management architecture. So what you see here is you see on the right-hand side the architecture with 3 S3260 chassis with 2 nodes each, connected through 40 gigabit Ethernet connectivity from each of the nodes. So these are 6 nodes across the 3 chassis deployed in 4+2 configuration for erasure coding. So that's, and then they are connected, each of the nodes is connected through dual 40 gigabit Ethernet links to the fabric interconnect. And there are 2 fabric interconnects for HA reasons, which are then connected optionally through to the nexus on the top, again through 40 gigabit Ethernet connectivity, which could be done as a VPC, and the piece on the nexus on top is shown as optional, because if you have existing nexus switches or some other switches, you can just connect them to the fabric interconnect. And then also what you see is optional is the HA proxy. The reason for the HA proxy is to distribute the read load or the gets to the different nodes equally. Now, if you already have existing servers that you are leveraging for load balancing, there's no need to deploy these C220 servers for load balancing. The only reason we're showing here is that they're optional, and just to show that that can be done. And so this is all documented inside the validated design. This is based on UCS management because it is connected through Fabric Interconnect, and we will talk about the details from a UCS management perspective for this solution. It is based on 40 gigabit end-to-end Ethernet. This is using dual nodes for storage nodes. It is very easy to scale. So with 6 nodes, you have approximately 1 petabyte of usable capacity, which can then scale up to, you could have approximately up to 40 nodes for this single domain with UCS FIs, which corresponds to about 6+ petabytes of usable capacity across that domain. And obviously you can have multiple domains, so you can scale that out much more as well. This is a policy-driven architecture, and we'll talk about the details of that coming up. It is enabled for mixed workloads. So the point here is that with Cloudian, you could be running different types of workloads, such as backup or video, or maybe for healthcare, as was mentioned by Grant earlier. There are multiple use cases where you may want to use object storage, and with Cloudian's HyperStore software, with QoS capability on a per object basis, you have capability to mix and match these different workloads and provide strict guarantees as to how these workloads should be treated. So it's a very flexible model, very scalable model that's based on the Cisco and UCS technologies. Now let's sort of look at the details of on the compute side. So double-clicking on that, there are two options that you can deploy for your storage nodes. One is the S3260, which is a 4RU node, which has maximum capacity of, and this is raw capacity of 720 terabytes. And then you have the C240, and what we are showing here is the large form factor chassis, so 2RU, and that can go up to, so that takes up to 12 drives of 12 terabytes each, so that's 144 terabytes that it can scale up to. With S3260, you have, again, very high performance with 40 gigabit Ethernet. We'll talk about the capacity in the coming up slides, and from a storage perspective as well. And you do have on the S3260, which is a multifunctional platform, you have connectivity in both, in terms of both Ethernet and fiber channel. Obviously here we're talking about Ethernet. And then from a scalability perspective, this is very simple and it can grow and can scale very easily and quickly, both from a software perspective, Cloudian, which is unlimited scalability, and from a UCS perspective, because it's very easy to add nodes. And this is has been deployed quite a lot across the world. So let's sort of talk about the details of the S3260. The S3260 can have up to 60 drives of HDD with 12 terabytes each. Of those 60 drives, you have options. They could be HDD, or 28 of those 60 could be SSDs, or you could have a PCIe slot where you could put an NVMe card into the PCIe slot. One of the reasons why you might want to consider using SSD is, or NVMe, is because you want to have your metadata on Cloudian be very fast and accessible across all your nodes. So, typically about 1% of your capacity would be in SSD or NVMe. So that's sort of what can be used here. The fact that this is a very flexible platform, and it lends itself very well to our use case here. This is using the VIC card. So you can have, so the VIC allows you to go up to 40 gigabit Ethernet connectivity. Now, with this S3260, you have the option for it to be deployed as a single node or a multi-node or a dual node system. So the fact is that with a single node system, you have a single controller, a single VIC that can be used. And this would be with a single controller, so a dual socket system that is used to go ahead and access all of those 60 drives. Or you can have a dual node system where you have two different controllers, each a dual socket CPU, and one controller is, and that the number of drives then goes to 56. So one controller can access 28 and the other controller can access other 28. One of the reasons why you might want to have a dual controller system versus a single controller system is obviously you get more nodes, and it also gives you higher performance. So each VIC is connected to dual 40 gigabit links. So having a dual node system means that now you have 4 40 gigabit links that are connected to this chassis. That's a lot of bandwidth that can be used for this. So again, a very flexible system that can be used, and also it can be managed through UCS Manager. So the advantage, all this flexibility vis-a-vis traditional 2RU servers, you can see the numbers here, lower CapEx, less cabling, less space because it's much more consolidated, and lower power as well. Now, let's talk about management. So this was what people talked about, that from a management perspective. So obviously from a data management, one is the hardware management, and then the second piece is obviously the object storage software as well, which Grant will talk to. But here, focusing on the compute side only, from a management perspective, UCS Manager has been widely deployed, and one of the key reasons why UCS has been very successful. UCS was introduced in 2010, and since then has gained a lot of acceptance and has become a market leader, and that's primarily because of the management capability that is built into the UCS platform, and that management refers to UCS Manager. So with UCS Manager, you are connecting through the FI, the Fabric Interconnect server ports. So you've got the Fabric Interconnect that is connected to each node, and the management is chassis-wide and per server node as well. The advantage is that with UCS Manager, you can go ahead and update and upgrade your configuration, your firmware management, your service profiles. So the idea here is that you can have service profiles. So you can create templates for deploying your nodes and your chassis, and as you bring on new nodes, you can use these templates and actually use the service profiles, which describe the full identity of the server, create them very quickly from the templates that you created initially, so scale out very quickly. And then you can, so first is sort of from a configuration perspective, just to bring up the system, and then ongoing management also is very easy because you can upgrade these different firmware capabilities for the entire domains, for the entire domain, all the chassis that are connected to the domain through UCSM, rather than sort of individually going to each adapter, each drive, and updating them one by one. So that's the whole beauty of UCS Manager. And then this is also talking about Cisco Intersight. Currently, Cisco Intersight can only monitor the S3260 through the Fabric Interconnect. It is a roadmap item in terms of full management, as what you can see below, in terms of it's later part of this calendar year. We're looking to have full management through Intersight for S3260. And just talking about S3260, when this capability does come to S3260 in terms of full management, we're very excited about that capability. Today, Intersight can be used to manage the C-Series servers. So if you do have a C240-based system, then Intersight can be definitely used to manage the C240s completely. And the advantage of the Intersight is that it is unified management. So if you have multiple regions and multiple data centers where you have deployed your Cloudian HyperStore, you can have Intersight running. Intersight is running in the cloud, so that's how it works. It runs in the cloud. So you would go to www.intersight.com, log in with your credentials, and then you have full access and visibility into all these servers that Intersight is managing, which can be worldwide across all your data centers. And the advantage is that you can sort of do this as software as a service. So in terms of updates, this is done as a continuous integration, continuous delivery model. So when a new firmware comes out or a new upgrade comes out, it is automatically deployed to the different servers across all the data centers You do have control if you want to say, I only want to do these servers at a given point in time. But the point is, you don't have to manage and monitor and so on a per server basis or even on a per UCSM basis. Once you have this capability, it is being automatically done in the background for you. So that's a big advantage that you have. And the other thing is from an Intersight, we are only managing the control path. We're not looking at the data, which is sort of customer proprietary from the control plane in terms of Intersight. It's very easy to add these nodes. So the device connector for Intersight comes embedded in the INC or the UCSM for the different servers, and then you would go through a protocol to connect those devices as long as they have outbound access to connect to Intersight, and then you claim those devices and you can manage those devices. It's very programmable in terms of APIs, in terms of northbound APIs, so you can have Ansible, Puppet, or Chef, your popular DevOps tools that you can use to come in and manage this environment. Also, once we do have, with Intersight, let's say for your C240s, the great advantage is that you have enhanced connected TAC experience. So typically, if there's a problem on your servers, you have to sort of, you figure out first, oh, there's a problem, then you have to call, let's say you need to call TAC. If there's a server that's down, you need to replace that server. With Intersight, TAC, it's up to you if you want to sort of allow that. TAC can be connected and can proactively contact you if something is down, if something is wrong in your system, and can actually tell you that a server or something needs to be upgraded, and can actually ship you parts proactively as well. So that's a big advantage. And then when you call in, there's no need to upload log files and so on. You can give access to TAC, and they can come in and sort of automatically look at all your logs. There's no case of, did you have the logs captured at the time when the fault happened and so on. That's all enabled, and there's visibility that the TAC has. So that's a very big advantage as well. It's there for C240 today, and will be there for S3260 in the later part of the year. There's also a recommendation engine where it can recommend to you in terms of, if you need to add capacity or if you need to add more, if you need to do any updates and so on. So very excited about that. Now, we do have solution IDs that are available that we on Cisco Workplace that you can come in and order. These are solution IDs for entry-level, mid-range, and enterprise. We have published them. This is work in progress as we're working with Cloudian. We will continue to update and add to these solution IDs. Grant, passing it to you at this time.
Thanks, and I appreciate it. Let's talk a little bit more about the Cloudian HyperStore that runs on Cisco UCS platforms. Again, this is an integrated solution validated through testing by Cisco. And on this chapter, I'm just going to cover the HyperStore object storage part of that solution. So let me start by just mentioning that HyperStore is perhaps the industry's most compatible S3 object storage. Why is that important? S3 is the industry standard set by Amazon AWS, and there is a huge requirement to have that available on-premise for those applications that talk S3. So we are on-prem S3. It's possible to start small if you don't have a lot of data. Maybe you have 100 terabytes, and that can easily fit on the Cisco C240, as Nitin mentioned. We have customers who scale up into the petabytes with this same solution. Actually, this is the S3260 at that level. And of course, there's a unified view of data across all locations, including public cloud. And this is, again, this does work with public cloud. It's an on-premise deployment, so you're wondering how does that work in the cloud? HyperStore tiers and replicates directly to public cloud. It's, again, a unified view, so we know where the data is, and it works fine. And it's very, very cost-effective, pennies per gigabyte, and that is very important for customers when their data is growing quite a lot. I'll just mention that Storage Magazine nominated and awarded Cloudian as the 2018 Product of the Year. That's the HyperStore a gold level award. The other thing I will highlight is if you go to Gartner peer review, Peer Insights, you'll see that Cloudian is the highest rated object storage, and this is by customers. This is not Gartner's opinion or anybody, but customers of the product. And this is compared on this slide with Dell EMC and NetApp, and if you're on the Gartner site, you can see how this compares to others. We have a 4.8 rating. 96% of our customers would recommend Cloudian HyperStore. It's the highest level recommendation level out there. So in case you want to learn more about that, there's a lot of information. Some of the areas where we are unique, where we are advantage for customers, include this policy-based data protection. Nitin had mentioned the 4+2. That's a erasure coding configuration, and this is really regarding data durability. So it really is about the data. How do you protect it at a storage level? And that's where the policy-based protection comes from. We have the ability to actually mix and match this erasure coding with replication by node, by site, across sites. So very flexible. That's one of the ways to make it more cost effective. Some of the other features and capability include multi-tenancy, which is a way to slice and manage separately tenants of storage, including their own QoS and billing. So you may be a service provider, that could be very interesting, but you may also be an enterprise company that wants to do internal management of storage and billing and so forth. A few other ones here are the integrated search and data analytics. Nitin mentioned the metadata that runs with HyperStore. We have a metadata engine, and there is a lot of benefit to running analytics on that metadata that is associated with the regular data, the object data, and so that's available as well. So let me move on and highlight a few other key points here. In case you're wondering, or you're not a storage expert, where does Cloudian HyperStore fit in the storage landscape? So if you think about primary storage, such as Cisco HyperFlex and others, including some of the flash-based storage, that's really for what we call fast data, or that's your primary access for data. If you have other data, such as the data I mentioned at the beginning, as well as that listed here on the right side of the slide, that's we call that capacity data. That is perfect fit for Cloudian and Cisco solution, and that represents about 80% of the data out there, and that is where all this massive growth is coming from. So if you have capacity-intensive application workloads, such again as listed here, data protection, media active archive, video surveillance. These are all very good examples. That is a very good fit with this solution. I'll mention the management, the intuitive UI that comes with HyperStore. And I'll summarize here by just highlighting a few other key features. We talked about scalability. Nitin mentioned that, but this is really important because this is non-disruptive scaling. So you can add capacity, you can add drives, you can add nodes, you can add sites non-disruptively with zero downtime, and there's automatic rebalancing of the system. So that's important from an operational point of view. Very granular configuration in terms of how that cluster gets managed, and again, cloud interoperability. This is a great way to leverage the cloud-based application. So HyperStore really is the industry's most flexible, most scalable, and cost-effective platform for capacity data. This is a slide showing the flexibility of deployment. So you may have one or more sites where you're architecting that with a replication or erasure coding, again, to protect the data. You can add a public cloud for hybrid cloud. The typical use cases for that might be capacity expansion or data protection in terms of just replicating a copy into the cloud as another location. And then, of course, multi-cloud, and here we're talking multiple public clouds, a few listed here, as well as a private cloud on-prem, and all of that together. So there's data management. This all comes with HyperStore. There's no extra software for that. It's just built in. So modular scalability, again, this goes to exabytes if you have that much. This is a geo distribution, and I'll just mention what I mean by that is there's a single global namespace across all of those locations to do the management, to do the visibility, to provide that capability across these locations with one single architecture. So growth without limits. This is a view of a typical deployment, large-scale deployment. This is a mesh network, in effect, where all the nodes see each other. Key point on this slide is that unlike some implementations, with HyperStore, you don't have to have each node the same size as another node. So we're showing no restrictions here. You can have 96 terabytes on one, 700 on another one, and so forth. So that's very nice. Again, it's a way to make this cost-effective. So moving into our last chapter here, this is just kind of a view of, now that I understand the solution, what are some of the typical use cases here? We're not showing all because there are quite a few, but just highlight a few of these for you. This first one here shows data protection in terms of backup and archive. And what you see here on the left are your application workloads running. I'm showing Cisco HyperFlex, but this could be any server. This is a backup solution from a Veeam or a Rubrik or a Commvault or Veritas running on a Cisco C220 or C240, and that talks S3 into the Cloudian on the right side. So again, this can scale. I'm just showing this in a simple way, but you can imagine this in multiple locations. On the right, optionally, is the tiering or replication to a public cloud. Typical use case for that might be a disaster recovery location or more. So this we see it quite a lot. And this is proven and works very, very well. If I scale that up a bit, what I'm showing here now is in addition to the HyperFlex and other servers on the left, I'm also showing SAN and NAS primary storage that's also being protected, that's also being backed up. Again, it's the same backup software in the middle that's backing up into a Cloudian cluster. Again, this can be one location or multiple locations. And then, of course, we can have the disaster recovery site or some off-site location as well. Just going quickly through this, we have customers together with Cisco in the media and entertainment space. This here is just a typical media and entertainment workflow, where on the left you have ingest and capture of data, in this case video images or other kinds of images, and that gets processed by the media asset manager or other media applications, and then stored in the Cloudian Cisco solution. Those are video files, image files, other metadata, custom metadata, in fact, can be added to that as well, and other enterprise data. And then finally, that's available for sharing, for access. Content distribution comes right out of that cluster. So I mentioned the multi-tenancy in the feature set, just showing you what that use case looks like. That is Cloudian in this picture within its own cloud. Let's call it an enterprise cloud by the service provider, who manages the QoS and the billing, and they have the tenants on the left. The beautiful thing about this is the capacity and bandwidth can be added as needed. This is a service model in the sense that it's storage as a service. You might imagine that it's easy enough to run backup as a service or data protection as a service. It's really the same idea, and you get the same management and control across one or more of the service provider locations. One other use case here, I mentioned the media and entertainment. There is a legendary weekend comedy show. I think they're up to about 45 years now. They are storing all of those years on the Cloudian and Cisco solution. They had a real challenge similar to what I mentioned at the outset. They needed a faster, more reliable, more scalable solution to replace tape. Tape replacement is a big use case here, as there are issues with tape. They needed a much faster access to the content, and they have petabytes of data. With this solution, I think they're up to about 6 or 7 petabytes of that data. So very happy, successful migration of that from tape into this cluster. This is multiple locations, much easier to manage, much easier to share these media assets across locations, and now they have a better long-term protection solution. And there on the left is a quote from the head of production over there. "My job is to make sure our assets are stored, safe, and accessible. We're finally there with an answer that will hold up over time. With Cisco and Cloudian, we've had our last ever data migration, and that feels good." So we're just going to summarize here, and I'll just hand it back to Nitin. Thank you.
Thanks, Grant. So, in summary, first, thank you for joining us, and I wanted to sort of just summarize what Grant and I have talked about. I'd sort of lay it out in 3 terms. First is management. So I'd say management, performance, and scale. So just talking about management, it's been, from a manageability perspective, it's very easy to provision and bring up the UCS, whether it's C240s or S3260s. So it's very easy to bring it up, and then very easy to manage it over a period of time as you have patches and upgrades for firmware across the different components within the chassis and across all the chassis. So with UCSM and with Intersight, very easy to manage. From a performance perspective, the fact is it's optimized performance. So you've got dual 40 gigabit Ethernet links per node that you can have with a C240 or with an S3260. And it's optimized because you can have a lot of capacity of storage inside a 4RU chassis. From a scale perspective, the fact is you can start out small with the C240 and then go to S3260. You can, from a compute perspective, you can start out in a single region. You can expand to multiple regions or to multiple data centers. You can add nodes very quickly. And then also, as you've got your on-prem, you can also migrate you can use the object storage inside the cloud as well. And the fact that Grant highlighted is 100% compatibility on S3 is a key item there. With Amazon, the S3 is based on the Amazon protocol, S3 protocol, and it is 100% compatible. There's 50 plus APIs that there are there for the S3 protocol. About 25 of them are considered to be advanced. With Cloudian, 100% guarantee with respect to the API. So the fact is you could be running your applications in the cloud or on Cloudian HyperStore. You don't need to worry about whether it's going to work or not. It's 100% compatible, guaranteed. So it's a very scalable model in terms of both hardware, software, across different locations, regions, data centers, public cloud, hybrid cloud, and so on. And then if you want to sort of reach out to us, reach out to your local Cisco salesperson, your SEs, your Cisco AM, and same thing for Cloudian. There are also resources that you can access, and there are links here that you can look at, and these slides will be available in BrightTalk that you'll be able to see. And there's also links that are in the attachments and links section as well. And that's pretty much all we had from a presentation perspective. I think now we can go to the Q&A section.
Yes, excellent. Thank you, Nitin, and thank you, Grant, for all your time today and this great presentation. We'd also like to thank our audience again for joining us. We do have some time for questions. So if you haven't already, go ahead and enter those into the question panel at the bottom of your screen. And then as Nitin and Grant have both pointed out, we do have that attachment section, so be sure to check that out. So, our first question for today looks like it is for Grant. What is the biggest benefit with using Cloudian HyperStore with Cisco?
Great. Yes, I'll take that. I think there's really 3 points here. One is the flexible deployment that I had mentioned in the presentation. HyperStore works really seamlessly with Cisco in one or more locations. And we do have mutual customers doing this today. So it's a proven solution, including in multi-petabyte environments. The second thing I would highlight is management. So Nitin just touched on that, but there is a unified view and control and access to all of the data. It's managed as a single storage pool, and there's great efficiencies that are enabled here with that. And the third thing I'd emphasize is the cost effectiveness of this solution here with the combination of Cloudian HyperStore and Cisco. the solution will scale very cost effectively, as I mentioned, no downtime and zero disruption here as you add data. So as you need to add capacity, this is going to be cost effective and really sort of cloud economics, if you will, with that solution.
Great. Nitin, there is a question here. I'm interested to learn more about the Cisco S3260. How widely has this been deployed?
Sure, definitely. With S3260, it has been, it has been very successful in the marketplace since we introduced it. It is deployed by 700 plus customers. Over 1 exabyte of data has been deployed on S3260. So a lot of customers, a lot of enterprise class customers, the top 3 cable providers in the United States are using S3260. So it is very widely used. It is for multiple different data-intensive workloads because of the capacity, efficiency, and performance that it has.
Great. Thank you. Let's see, another question is, we have a hard time adding capacity without disruption. Can I add capacity to Cloudian non-disruptively without impacting our operations?
I'll take that one. Yes, the answer is yes. That's a key feature of HyperStore, zero downtime scaling. As was said, you can start small, with terabytes of data with the C240 and scale that up to petabytes or hundreds of terabytes, if you will, with the S3260. And that is non-disruptive scaled capacity.
Excellent. Another question, how easy is it to add new UCS servers?
I'll take that. It's very easy through UCS Manager, because UCS Manager is a template and policy-based infrastructure management platform. So the point is that you can create templates and then use service profiles which have been cloned from those templates to deploy new servers, because the service profile contains the entire identity of the server. So very easy to scale and to add servers, which is very much in sync with Cloudian, because Cloudian allows you to basically take it to unlimited scalability. So that's the advantage with UCS, is that it allows you to deliver on, allows Cloudian to deliver on that in a very seamless, quick, easy manner.
Excellent. Okay. There's another comment question. This seems like a great on-prem solution, but tell me more about including public cloud into my environment.
Okay, I'll take that, and Nitin, feel free to chime in as well. With respect to HyperStore, this deploys as an on-prem solution with the Cisco UCS servers. And when there is a need, we have customers who tier up to or replicate data to one or more of the public clouds, as I mentioned. Cloudian does partner with Amazon AWS, with Google Cloud, Microsoft Azure, among other cloud providers. In fact, we have many cloud providers as customers. Cloudian also works as a hybrid and multi-cloud solution, so don't get confused by the on-prem idea. The world is moving toward this hybrid multi-cloud environment. Nitin, would you like to add anything to that?
No, I think, Grant, you did a great job. The whole point is with 100% S3 compatibility, customers can be running the same applications on different locations with full peace of mind that these applications will work regardless of the location.
Great. So it looks like we have about 3 minutes left, so maybe time for one more question. There is a question about what would be needed to get started.
So I can take that. We have solution IDs that we have created on Cisco. So when you go to Cisco CCW, where you go ahead and order the different products from Cisco in terms of compute, you would go to solutions, data center solutions, then software-defined storage, and there you will see the Cloudian solution IDs that we have created, bundles that we have created for the Cloudian specific architecture, and also in sync with the validated design. And then also you would then sort of work with your Cisco partner or Cisco salesperson to order that, and then you'd work with your Cloudian salesperson to bring in and put the software in. And then you would use your UCS manager to go ahead and deploy the compute side and then bring up the Cloudian on top of that. Anything you want to add to that, Grant?
No, that sounds good. I'll take 2, please. No, I appreciate that. It really is simple and easy. We get a lot of feedback from customers about that, how easy it is to bring up and, again, to add nodes and locations without that disruption. So it is easy to get going and to stay simple.
Great. Thank you again, Nitin and Grant.